This is the very first 3D printer I ever owned. And this is my current robot army. These 3D printers earn me a net income of a little over $20,000 a year. And I actually went 100% full-time on the income from this side hustle business for over a year and a half, beginning only 3 months after I started selling products on Etsy. From that beginning, making stuff as a mini manufacturer in my own home, I am now actually giving it up. And in this video, I'm going to explain a little bit about the rise of the business and also why I'm moving on. My first Etsy business was actually one where I made roses. One of the first ways that I told my wife that I loved her was when I made her a steel rose when we were both still teenagers. I didn't actually say I love you because that was too scary, but I figured I could make this thing and give it to her and I could show her. And as a result, it's become a bit of a symbol for us. After the first rose, I kind of dialed it in. I spent some time and I got fairly good at making these crafted steel roses and making them look really nice. And I actually was able to do the floral arrangements for our wedding. This was good experience in two ways. It taught me how to set up an Etsy shop and how easy that was to do. And my very first interactions with customer service were from this business. But the business itself was not actually a good business, because it couldn't scale. Every single one of these roses had to be made by me by hand, and everything that was special about them was something that was a matter of skill, which means that it was kind of hard to teach. And if I could teach someone else to do it, why wouldn't they just do it themselves? Another problem with the business is that I was essentially selling really pretty knickknacks. No one actually needs a steel rose. They're nice, they're pretty, but essentially it's going to sit on a shelf somewhere and just look nice. As a result, that is very much a disposable income product. The fact that every single one of these roses was made by hand also meant that I had to charge essentially based on my time. And if I was going to charge a decent rate for my time, the roses became absurdly expensive and thus were kind of hard to sell. It wasn't a good business, and it taught me a lot about that principle of scalability. My second attempt at starting a business was when I bought a Maslow CNC machine. This machine is a marvel of engineering. It is an extremely cheap, accessible way to get into CNC cutting in a 2.5 axis machine that's able to do a little bit of a plunge cut, but not really any three-dimensional shapes. And it can work with a whole native 4x8 sheet of plywood. The low price point of the Maslow CNC machine was what really got me excited, because with a low startup cost, the return on investment is easier. A return on investment is when you have made enough money that you're able to offset and kind of replace the cost of having gotten into the business in the first place. So with a machine that only costs $500, you only have to sell $500 worth of stuff in order to get your money back. And that return on investment seemed doable. It's not the kind of thing I would need to take a giant business loan out to do. So I had the machine and I got it dialed in and we started testing it and we ran into problems. First, this CNC machine required me to be there constantly to babysit it. So I wasn't able to do something else during the time that the machine was working. That's incredibly important. Second, my shed could only fit one of these machines. And third, the machine was very slow. While it could cut things reasonably precisely, it couldn't cut faster than me with a jigsaw. So it technically would have been faster, because I still have to be there. It's using not only its time, but my time. I could have just had a paper pattern and cut it out and been as efficient as having this machine. So it wasn't actually a great business plan. I did make one set of bellows as kind of a prototype, and I actually gave those to Andy from the channel How to Make Everything. You can see those in some of his videos. So after 2 failed attempts, I actually stumbled into the third one almost completely by accident. I got my very first 3D printer in December of 2017, and this was pretty close to the beginning of our channel. So there's actually an unboxing video where I demonstrate opening it up and getting started as an absolute noob who knew nothing about 3D printing. And I made some really cool things, including a lower receiver for an AR-15 at one point. But I had this idea in my head that 3D design was incredibly difficult and I wasn't going to touch that. Until I got an idea. And that idea was to make a spinning wheel based off of the one that Mahatma Gandhi used that would fit inside of a notebook. And I thought this is probably something that's simple enough that even I could do it, where it would just be a couple of pulleys stacked on top of each other. How hard could a pulley be to make? Well, I played around with a couple of programs trying to learn how to make one for a few months, and then I made a prototype. I made a YouTube video about it, and I was really excited about this product. And then it was my wife who had the brilliant idea of taking this thing that I'd created and putting it on Etsy. So I did, not expecting much of it, and it started to sell. And I realized that that complaint that I had had for years, that products in the fiber arts space, like spinning wheels and looms and things of that nature, are ridiculously overpriced, was apparently shared by other people. We just filled our first order, so my wife just went to the post office and sent the package. So the first one sold on Etsy. And that's tremendously cool. I'm on my way to starting a print farm. My math says that I can print about 3 of these things per day. At the profit margin I've got, with any luck, that means I can pay for a new machine, provided I've got one running at full capacity. I can pay for a second machine in like 4 days. And so I thought, wow, if this is selling, maybe I could sell some wool combs. So I threw together a design for wool combs over the course of about 3 days and a couple of prototypes during that short time period. And I was able to make a pair of wool combs that again started to sell. And at this point, the money was coming in a little bit. I mean, it wasn't as much as my regular income, but there was some money. That was cool. Here we have the most recent batch of wool combs and wool hackles fresh off the printer. It's about 2.5 days worth of printing. And I thought a full-size spinning wheel would sell really well. So I iterated on that for about a month, designed it, put it out there, and it started to sell. And that one actually started to sell well enough that the profit margin was good and the amount of revenue per purchase was good. And I was selling this thing for $200, which is way less than a typical spinning wheel is. So my customers felt like they were getting a deal, and I felt like I was getting a deal, and there was just a win-win all around. And then I lost my job. I was in a toxic work environment and I managed to get out. And this side hustle, which at that point had essentially been hobby money, it became my job that fast. Essentially fulfilling that long-term dream of going full-time with a DIY business, working for myself. After all these years, it finally happened, and completely by accident. 2 random interests, one in 3D printing and one in fiber arts, kind of combined together. And I paid the bills with this 3D printing business for well over a year. I paid the rent, I paid the utilities, a lot of our groceries were coming out of this thing. I was full-time on a 3D print job. And as the numbers trended upward, I started dreaming about things like renting out a warehouse space and having this massive fleet of printers and hiring people to help me out and, you know, being the kind of a captain of industry. It's my hope that this video will be both encouraging and also real. And I think you can do both at the same time. On the encouraging side, I went from knowing absolutely nothing about 3D printing. I started with that one right there. And I got to the point where I'm running all of these, and I managed to live full-time on the income from 3D printing. So a noob can learn it. It's noob speaking. I started as a complete noob, and now I kind of know what I'm doing. I designed that. That's cool. On the realist side, I wanted to explain a little bit about the numbers that we used to make this thing work. It's worth talking about how we were able to make things work financially on the money that came in from this 3D print business. We were supporting a family of 6 at first and then 7. We made it work. The profit margin was great, but the volume of purchases I was able to sell at any given time were not great. Over the lifetime of the business, I've put out about 2,000 orders. And my average over the last 3 years has been about $20,000 per year. The reason I was able to make that financially work is because we were living well below the poverty line. At the time we were living in Monticello, my rent for a house was $600 a month. I was living in an extremely rural area, and so property rates were a lot lower. Also, my medical insurance situation for my family is that we were on government assistance. We were also on government aid for food. So we were able to make it work. We were able to be full-time and have that independence, kind of, but only because of the social safety net and because my rent was so absurdly cheap. The numbers continued to grow, but very slowly and steadily, with a massive bump around Christmas. Since this time of working full-time on this little side hustle business, I've passed the bar exam and gotten a job as a licensed attorney. And the 3D print business shifted from being our primary source of income and the absolute thing keeping us afloat to being a very helpful side hustle, but one that started to require a lot of my time. And it's been something that's been keeping me up till 10 or 11 o'clock at night, most nights during the week. I have fallen out of love with this 3D print shop. Currently filling orders. I've had a horrible cold the last couple of days, so I'm a couple days behind. And so right here, I'm going through my orders list. Got my label printer right there. And there I've got some boxes that I'm filling in. Back here we've got printers working on a couple of things that need to be finished last minute. Here's a big pile of parts that need to be cleaned. And here I've got a big old wall of parts that are already made. I brought in about $45,000 total, and taking into account purchasing a few new printers and other such things, I ended up bringing home a total of about $19,000, which is good. I mean, $19,000 is a lot of money until you think about part-time jobs. And this has been a part-time job that has eaten a lot of my evenings and requires me to do it even when I'm sick. I can't take a sick day from this. Customers need what they ordered. Otherwise, I've been dishonest by selling it to them. I don't want to do that. And I'm struggling to get the volume up to the point where it would be really worth my time. Because right now it's eating my time, and I need to sell more to get a kind of economy of scale there. And I'm also working full-time at the same time. Not my favorite. So that's how I'm feeling right now. Today is February 20th, 2024, and I'm frustrated and sick and tired. Literally. Based on that figure of about $20,000 a year in profit, and then the slight increase that it was seeing year over year, back of the envelope estimate of how much this business is worth is about $76,000. And I'm giving it away now. I have a friend who is similar to me in many ways, who's good with his hands, good at figuring things out, good at maintaining machines, and who has an absolute itch, similar to the one that I have long had, to become 100% independent and self-sufficient. So why do you want to run your own business?
I just like being creative. And there's no better way to exercise your creativity than being able to say, my future's in my own hands, I'm going to try this. If it works, awesome, I've made a profit. If it doesn't, I might bankrupt myself. But that excites me. It's my form of gambling, I guess.
Having your life in your own hands, basically.
Exactly.
That's cool. I hope you make it.
I hope I do too.
That's insanely cool, man. At this time, the business is too much for me and about the right amount for him. And so I am giving 8 of my 3D printers. I'm downsizing my fleet and keeping only enough to kind of maintain hobby stuff and stuff for the YouTube channel. And I'm going to give him the Etsy shop and everything that he needs to make a successful go out of it. I'm asking him to do a rebrand, so anything with the Good and Basic name will be converted to something that he chooses. I'll leave a link in the description below telling you a little bit more about how he's going to run the shop from now on. If I get enough comments to this video asking details about how this business operated and like what programs I used to do my 3D design or how I set prices or any of the nitty-gritty details, I'd be happy to make another video. Just leave a comment in the description below and we'll try to make that happen. It has been an incredible learning experience. And at this point in my personal development, the 3D print shop has taught me what I needed to learn. I know how to price check and calculate how much profit I'll be able to make. I know how to do research in terms of what people are actually willing to spend on the product I want to sell and how to treat people right so that they want to come back. And how to make sure that I have the parts that I need when I need them. I have the confidence that essentially the business, or at least the ability to create one like it, is now in me. I still want independence. I still want to work for myself, and I still want to be primarily working at home someday. Right now, though, I think what I personally need more are some hard lessons that I don't think I can learn purely at home. One of the things that I learned about myself while running this business is that I'm not great at time management. I fulfilled most orders right at the second or just after when they were due. And technically I had all the time in the world. I had 8 hours a day. If you were to take your average workday and just apply it to your own projects, wouldn't you be so productive? In my case, I've found that I'm not. I've found that I spend way too much time looking at YouTube videos and getting distracted and wandering around the shop kind of aimlessly in the middle of a big mess. And over the 3 years that I've run the business, I've improved substantially in all of these regards. I've become more aware with my time, and I've become generally faster and more efficient. And that's good, but I'm not where I feel like I could be. And in terms of my personal growth, I want to push there. I've identified this weakness, and I want to see it become a strength. And that is one of the major reasons why I've actually joined a law firm. And now I'm doing billable hours and working in a completely new environment. In any discussion about freedom, there's kind of two aspects. One of them is freedom from something, and another one is freedom to something. And what I've discovered from these 3 years of being my own boss with this business is that even when I didn't have a boss, I was still shackled by limits that were in my own mind. And so I'm working on one more layer toward becoming free and independent by learning discipline. This YouTube channel is going to continue, but my Etsy shop is going to be moving into a new set of hands. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe below. If you would like to check out the Etsy shop, please look below, and best of luck to Nathan with this new project. And thank you for watching.